Welcome to Bible Tales. We're excited to share timeless Bible stories with you, full of faith and wisdom. If you enjoy our content, please like, comment, and subscribe to support us and stay connected. Thank you for being here. Happy listening. David's kindness to Mephibosheth. Compassion and the fulfillment of a covenant. The palace halls echoed with the steady rhythm of King David's steps as he paced in thought. Israel was at peace, its enemies subdued, its borders secure. Yet David's heart was stirred by a different matter that day. Memories of Jonathan, his closest friend, surfaced vividly, bringing both joy and sorrow. Jonathan, the son of King Saul, had been more than a friend. He was like a brother. Their bond had been sealed with a covenant of loyalty and love, a promise that transcended their personal fates. Now, years later, David was determined to honor that covenant. He turned to his attendants and asked a question that seemed to come out of nowhere. Is there anyone left of the house of Saul to whom I may show kindness for Jonathan's sake? The question hung in the air. Saul's lineage had been all but wiped out in the chaos of war and political upheaval. Yet David's heart remained resolute, not in vengeance, as was common for kings of his time, but in compassion, a forgotten servant. Word reached David about a man named Ziba, a former servant of Saul's household. Ziba was quickly brought before the king. Bowing low, he listened as David repeated his question. "There is still a son of Jonathan," Ziba replied cautiously, "but he is crippled in both feet." David's eyes softened. The revelation of Mephibosheth's disability did not dissuade him. If anything, it strengthened his resolve. "Where is he?" David asked. "In Lodabar," Ziba answered, "in the house of Machir, son of Amiel." Lodabar. The name itself meant no pasture, a desolate place. It was a far cry from the royal palaces Mephibosheth might have known as a child. A life of fear and hiding. Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan and grandson of King Saul, had lived much of his life in obscurity. At just 5 years old, his world had been shattered. News of Saul and Jonathan's deaths in battle had sent the royal household into panic. In the chaos, his nurse had fled with him, dropping the young boy and crippling him for life. Years had passed, and Mephibosheth grew up in Lodabar, a place where forgotten souls lived. Though he carried royal blood, he lived like a fugitive, fearing the wrath of the new king. After all, in those days, it was customary for new dynasties to eliminate any potential rivals. When word reached him that King David had summoned him, Mephibosheth's heart sank. He prepared for what he believed would be his final journey. The encounter. In Jerusalem, Mephibosheth was brought before the king. His journey had been filled with anxiety, and now, as he approached David, he fell on his face in submission. "Behold, I am your servant," he said, his voice trembling. David's response was unexpected. "Do not fear," he said gently, his voice filled with warmth. "For I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all the land of your grandfather Saul, and you shall always eat at my table." Mephibosheth lifted his head, astonishment written on his face. "What is your servant," he asked, "that you should show regard for a dead dog such as I?" David's compassion did not waver. He summoned Ziba and declared that all the land that had once belonged to Saul would now be Mephibosheth's. Moreover, Ziba and his household would serve Mephibosheth, ensuring the lands were cared for. Yet the greatest honor was this. Mephibosheth would dine at the king's table, treated not as a rival, but as one of David's own sons. A place at the table. From that day forward, Mephibosheth's life changed. No longer was he the forgotten son of Jonathan, living in obscurity. He took his place at the king's table, a symbol of David's unwavering kindness and loyalty. For Mephibosheth, every meal was a reminder of grace. He had brought nothing to the table, no strength, no wealth, no power. Yet David's generosity transformed his life, not because of what Mephibosheth had done, but because of a covenant made years before between David and Jonathan, a legacy of grace. The story of David and Mephibosheth is more than an account of ancient kindness. It is a vivid illustration of grace, unearned, undeserved, and unrelenting. David's actions reflect the heart of God, who seeks out the broken, the forgotten, and the fearful, offering them a place of honor and restoration. As Mephibosheth sat at the king's table, his brokenness was hidden. To anyone looking, he appeared as any other son of the king. And so it is with those who accept God's grace. Their flaws, their failures, and their fears are covered, and they are given a seat at the table of the king. Mephibosheth's transformation. Over time, Mephibosheth adjusted to his new life at the palace. Each day, as he sat at the royal table, he felt a profound sense of gratitude mingled with disbelief. His crippled feet, once a source of shame and isolation, were hidden beneath the fine linens of the king's dining table. To the outside world, he was no longer an outcast from Lodabar, but a son of the king. David's kindness not only restored Mephibosheth's dignity, but also created a legacy of compassion that echoed throughout Israel. Servants and courtiers often whispered about the king's remarkable act of mercy. Many began to see it as a reflection of the covenantal love of God, who lifts the lowly and restores the broken. Ziba's role and the servant's struggle. Ziba, the servant charged with managing Mephibosheth's newly restored lands, had mixed feelings about his role. Once a trusted steward of Saul's estate, Ziba now found himself serving the very man whose family had lost the throne. While outwardly obedient, Ziba harbored a quiet resentment, a tension that would later surface in the darker chapters of Mephibosheth's life. Nevertheless, under Ziba's management, the lands flourished. Crops grew abundantly, and Mephibosheth's household enjoyed newfound stability. Yet, even as his wealth increased, Mephibosheth remained humble, always mindful of the grace that had brought him from Lodabar to the palace. David's reflection. For David, showing kindness to Mephibosheth was more than fulfilling a promise. It was a reminder of God's faithfulness. He often found himself reflecting on his own journey, from a shepherd boy in Bethlehem to the king of Israel. Just as he had been lifted from obscurity, so too had Mephibosheth. David saw in him a reflection of his own dependence on God's grace. David's actions were not without their challenges. Advisors and allies occasionally questioned his decision to honor the lineage of Saul, a family once considered his enemy. Yet David stood firm, his compassion rooted in the unshakable covenant he had made with Jonathan. To David, Mephibosheth was not a threat, but a living testament to the power of loyalty, love, and divine mercy. A timeless lesson. The story of David and Mephibosheth is not merely a historical account, but a profound allegory of God's grace toward humanity. Like Mephibosheth, we are often broken, living in a place of spiritual barrenness, unworthy of the king's favor. Yet God, in his infinite kindness, seeks us out, not to condemn, but to restore. David's kindness to Mephibosheth reminds us that compassion is more than an act. It is a commitment, a fulfillment of promises made in faith and love. Through this story, we are challenged to reflect on our own lives. Who are the Mephibosheths in our world? Who are the forgotten, the broken, and the fearful waiting for an act of kindness to transform their lives?